A new study published in the National Science Review found that the novel coronavirus can mutate. Doctors in China are experimenting with a new form of treatment, giving patients new lungs, but the operations are raising ethical questions. Inside China, the seafood market in Wuhan is being disinfected, where many of the earlier coronavirus cases were linked. And we are seeing declining numbers of new deaths and infected cases inside China. But does the Chinese government's official number reflect the real situation in China? These recent discoveries might shed some light.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm your host, Tiffany Meyer. At the Central Hospital in the city of Shaanxi province, the bonus for medical staff on the front lines of the coronavirus outbreak was lower than hospital department heads. From the subsidy announcement, the maximum bonus was the same for frontline medical staff and hospital department heads at 12,600 yuan, but the minimum was different. For medical staff, the minimum was 3,300 yuan, while for hospital department heads, it was 8,100 yuan, much higher. One of the medical staff members who went to Hubei province to help out got the minimum. When netizens found out online, there was outrage. Many pointed out these so-called leaders work in the hospital headquarters, which is far away from the hospital that receives infected cases. And some department heads have never even visited the infected patients, just handed out assignments remotely and passed along instructions from authorities. The hospital has since issued a statement saying they would reconsider the bonus amounts, but netizens aren't convinced. A new study published in the National Science Review titled On the Origin and Continuing Evolution of SARS-CoV-2 found that the novel coronavirus can mutate. These viruses evolved into two major types called L and S. These two have different potency. The study found the L type was more common at 70%, while the S type was at 30%, but the S type was found to be the older version. And while the L type showed up more in the early stages of the outbreak in Wuhan, it started declining after early January 2020, while the S type, which is less aggressive, could have been increasing since then. The National Health Committee of China released the 7th edition of its trial treatment program for the novel coronavirus, adding a pathological change section. The new section states the virus can infect the lungs, spleen, lymph and bone marrow, heart, blood vessels, liver and gall, kidney, and other organs. And a hospital in Beijing said on Wednesday a 56-year-old patient was confirmed to have the coronavirus, adding the virus had infected his central nervous system. The patient has already been discharged. There have been multiple cases of neurocoronavirus damage to the nervous system. In a clinical study published in medical platform medRxiv, which publishes papers that have not yet been peer-reviewed, a team of doctors in China studied 214 coronavirus patients and found that more than 30% had neurological symptoms. A study just released by the Citizens Laboratory of the University of Toronto in Canada showed Chinese authorities had blocked virus-related keywords on the internet, including human-to-human, unknown Wuhan pneumonia, and Wuhan seafood market, a few weeks before the public announcement of the novel coronavirus outbreak. The study found on December 31st last year, a day after doctors like whistleblower Li Wenliang tried to warn the public about the then unknown virus, a live streaming platform in China began censoring words related to the outbreak. The study also found as the outbreak continued to spread between January and February this year, a wide range of content related to the virus was censored on WeChat, China's most popular chat app. Inside China, the South China wild animal market in Wuhan is being disinfected. Experts said many of the earlier cases were linked to this seafood market. A disease control team has started aggressive sterilization of that market. A netizen commented saying the Chinese Communist Party once again wiped out the evidence. After that, the truth about the Wuhan pneumonia will be hard to make public. And public outrage on how a top-level Chinese official has been handling the outbreak. A Beijing citizen, Xue Fuming, at high risk to himself, reported online with his real name and identity card number. He criticized Wang Huning, a member of the Politburo Standing Committee, which is the highest level of leadership in the Chinese regime, and is responsible for the propaganda efforts and ideology in China. In his criticism, the citizen called out Wang, saying he disregarded human life and lacks a basic conscience, saying he does not consider how to fight against the epidemic. Instead, he oversaw the publication of the book A Battle Against Epidemic, China Combating COVID-19 in 2020, and also the state-run media People's Daily published an article on the front page titled "Our Time Passes Sweeter Than Honey." He believes Wang should apologize to the people in China and to the people of the world for the disaster brought on by the outbreak. He said Wang should resign and take full responsibility for the political decisions. The front page article he mentions is about a city where citizens say life is getting better and better. In the article, those citizens praise the Chinese regime's leader for the good life. This citizen criticized the article for highlighting that it was published at a time when people in Wuhan are dying from the coronavirus outbreak. Since the coronavirus outbreak, this is the first case of a Chinese citizen publicly denouncing, with his real name, the actions of the Chinese regime's high-level officials. To find a cure for the coronavirus infection, doctors in China are experimenting with a new form of treatment, giving patients new lungs. But the operations are raising questions about how ethical the practice is. NTD's Penny Zhou has more.
Over the past weekend, China's state media reported that 2 COVID-19 patients are in stable conditions after going through lung transplant surgeries. The patients, one 59-year-old male and one 66-year-old female, are both critically sickened by the infection and have irreversible lung damages. Both were on life support or ECMO before the transplants. Looking at the timeline of the transplant process, some medical experts say it's incredible how quickly the hospitals found matching organs. According to Chinese media report, in the first case, doctors made the decision to conduct the transplant on February 24th, and the donation and transplant happened just 5 days after, on February 29th. The process for the second patient showed a similar high speed. By comparison, in New York, most patients wait for 10 to 14 months for a replacement lung to become available. Chinese state media claimed that the organs come from brain-dead donors, but did not offer details of their identity.
How old are the donors? What kinds of diseases do they have? What causes brain death? This is information that should be readily available, but the authorities didn't offer any information about it. They just said 2 brain-dead people donated their lungs, and they were able to do these emergency transplants. This is really abnormal.
For him, the sheer speed China was able to find organs for 2 consecutive cases is incredible.
We know that most brain-dead organs come from victims of traffic accidents. But the problem is, recently we know there are barely any people on the streets in China, nor are there many cars. So the chances of brain death due to car accidents should be extremely low right now. Then how are they able to get matching organs so quickly?
The main surgeon who operated the first transplant, Chen Jingyu, said that if the experiment turns out successful, they will conduct more transplants for coronavirus patients. In an interview with state media, Chen said they will consider all Wuhan patients with critical conditions and select some to get lung transplants. Such a promise raises ethical questions about the source of the organs, given China's record on organ transplants. Last year, an independent People's Tribunal in London delivered a judgment
that in China, forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience has been practiced for a substantial period of time, involving a very substantial number of victims.
Besides questions about the donor, an infectious disease expert says how helpful this is for the patient is also in question. Microbiologist Shang Lin said even though the patients tested negative before their operations, their bodies may not be clean of the virus, making it possible for the new organs to get infected.
That's why I think it's just totally against common sense.
Lin said to do this kind of transplant, doctors have to suppress the patient's immune system so the body will accept the foreign organ.
So you're suppressing people's immune at the same time, but people need to fight with the virus too, right? So how do you work on this together? And so that's why you putting the patient in higher risk that he may have a relapse of the COVID-19, even if he's on the track of recovery. And you actually give the patient extra suffering in this process. I don't even know if the patient's family really agree on this.
The operation also puts the medical staff at huge risk and possible exposure to the virus in the patient's body. So why did China coordinate so much resource to conduct the transplant and publicize it with state media?
From the news stories we can see, the whole operation is supported by local health authorities. They bypassed all medical paperwork and procedures and put everything they have into it. So when I read the news, my feeling is it's almost like propaganda organized by the Communist Party. The storyline is how the Communist Party is leading China to fight the disease.
Chinese authorities are facing a growing crisis over their handling of the coronavirus. Experts say its cover-up in the early stage and silencing of whistleblowers had put the party's legitimacy in question for the Chinese people. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A virus death left out of official numbers and a 23-day delay in announcing virus infections inside a Wuhan jail. These discoveries further reveal that the Chinese regime could be hiding the true scale of the coronavirus outbreak within its borders.
Recently, Chinese authorities have been reporting a declining number of new deaths and coronavirus cases, but recent reports indicate the Chinese government may be manipulating the numbers. In one case, an 84-year-old man was treated for the coronavirus after being infected by his relatives. He died last week, but his death wasn't counted in the official death toll. According to a Shanxi local news report, Yao was treated but remained in critical condition. Experts decided to try using plasma from recovered patients, which contains antibodies, to treat him. On February 27th, Yao's daughter was informed that he had died, but according to official Shanxi province statistics as of March 2nd, the virus death count remains at 0. After the public started questioning the numbers, officials responded that Yao recovered from the infection, and his death was caused by other illnesses. In another case, a woman confirmed to have the virus traveled out of Wuhan to Beijing after being released from prison. This happened on February 21st, 1 month after the city's total lockdown. Authorities are now investigating. Aside from how she was allowed to leave Wuhan, the March 2nd investigation notice says there was also at least one police officer confirmed to have the virus on January 29th. The officer was in close contact with the woman. That means the Hebei health authorities knew about the infection inside the prison as early as January 29th, but didn't tell the public until 23 days later, on February 21st. Inside China, Chinese citizens are raising questions about the Chinese regime's transparency. A doctor fighting the virus on the front line complained on dxy.cn, an online forum for medical professionals. He criticized the Communist Party, saying political correctness supersedes everything, including the health of patients and interests of the public. The doctor also said the way officials are manipulating the numbers is reminiscent of a Communist Party movement from the late 1950s, known as the Great Leap Forward. That's when local officials were compelled to over-fulfill production quotas, collecting surpluses that did not exist, and leaving tens of millions to starve to death.
President Trump today reassuring Americans that it is safe to fly. He met with airline CEOs who said passenger and crew safety is their top priority. They're also understanding of any passengers who wish to change or cancel upcoming flights.
President Trump met with airline leaders today to discuss the coronavirus. After the meeting, the president reassured Americans that air travel is safe.
It's safe to fly, and large portions of the world are very safe to fly.
He said the government has already begun blocking or screening people flying from unsafe countries. The Department of Homeland Security has so far screened 53,000 people and blocked several from entering.
We have closed down certain sections of the world, frankly.
Trump says this response has kept the number of U.S. infections low. The total now stands at around 120 as of Wednesday afternoon. That includes 46 Americans evacuated together from the Diamond Princess cruise ship in Japan.
If you don't add that to the numbers, we're talking about very small numbers in the United States.
Despite the relatively low numbers, airlines aren't taking any chances. Alaska Airlines telling the president that they have revised cleaning routines, established 3 levels of onboard cleaning, and increased cleaning intensity.
I think I was very reassured to hear the airlines talk about their cleaning procedures.
When asked if the government would give financial relief to airlines if people stopped flying, the president said they hadn't discussed it.
Lawmakers struck a bipartisan deal today and are set to dip into the government's pocketbook to help fight the coronavirus. They agreed on more than $8 billion in emergency funding.
The government has agreed on a dollar amount to fund preventative efforts and treatment options for the coronavirus, $8.3 billion. The majority of the funds, 85%, will be sent domestically. Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Richard Shelby announced the move on Wednesday. He explained that it's not a political matter, but a public safety concern. The emergency funding package was clinched as officials from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported well over 100 virus cases inside U.S. borders. 9 deaths have been reported so far, all of them in Washington state. Local officials are struggling to contain a mini outbreak, mainly centered around a nursing home in King County. The $8.3 billion proposal is more than triple the $2.5 billion that the White House originally asked for. After the administration's initial request, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responded with an $8.5 billion proposal. He said that he had expected a $7 to $8 billion proposal. President Trump has said that he'd be happy if lawmakers were willing to propose $8.5 billion. The bill will first need to pass the House and the Senate before it is signed into law by President Trump.
UK school students practiced a foot-to-foot handshake today as a way to help stop spreading the coronavirus.
Children at St. Christopher's School in the English city of Hove were filmed in the playground practicing what is becoming known on social media as the Wuhan Shake. Chris Holt, St. Christopher's Director of Marketing and Communications, said the school is exploring ways to greet friends, teachers, and other adults without shaking hands and risking the spread of the virus. It comes as the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in Britain leaped from 51 to 85 on Wednesday. It marks the biggest daily jump since the infection was first detected in the country.
Italy's government announced it will close all schools and universities across the country to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus after thousands of cases have been reported in more than a week. All schools are slated to be closed starting Thursday, March 5th, and will be shut down until Saturday, March 15th. African airlines are facing a hit of up to $40 million from the coronavirus outbreak, an industry body said on Wednesday.
The coronavirus epidemic could cost African airlines tens of millions of dollars in revenue this year, a global industry body has said, in a potentially devastating hit to often struggling airlines that count on lucrative Chinese routes to fund their expansion. Airlines around the world have suspended or modified flights amid the outbreak, which began in mainland China at the end of last year and has now spread to more than 60 countries worldwide. The global cost to the aviation industry is projected to be $29 billion this year, the International Air Transport Association has said. And at a conference in Addis Ababa on Wednesday, the organisation's special envoy to Africa said African airlines face a hit of as much as $40 million. The IATA had already forecast before the outbreak that African airlines would make a loss of around $200 million this year. Tewolde Gebre-Mariam, chief executive of the continent's biggest carrier, Ethiopia Airlines, said the company had seen air travel demand decline by 20%. His airline has faced criticism online for not cancelling flights to China, as Kenya, Tanzania and Rwanda have done. On Tuesday, Kenya also halted direct flights from 2 cities in northern Italy, the location of the biggest cluster of coronavirus cases in Europe.
And in his latest urban climbing stunt, French Spider-Man made his way up a Spanish skyscraper. He said the climb was symbolic, a message to people afraid of the virus outbreak.
The Torre Glorias in Spain is 38 stories high, but French Spider-Man went up without a harness. However, he didn't make this climb for fun. Alain Robert said he noticed people panicking over the novel coronavirus, so he wanted to give them a message.
And then people, they start to get a little bit crazy. And actually, fear is even more contagious than the disease itself.
French Spider-Man is known for his life-threatening urban climbing stunts, but this doesn't mean he isn't afraid to go up. He said he has to control his fear, and that's where his message lies.
So, most of all, avoiding panicking, because they are destroying their life. Do you think that it is nice living with that climate of fear?
Robert was arrested after coming down. He says he has suffered serious injuries from falls, but calls climbing his passion as well as his philosophy for life. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
The number of coronavirus cases in Japan has now hit 1,000, but officials for the Tokyo Olympics say the games will still go ahead as scheduled.
The number of coronavirus cases in Japan hit 1,000 on Wednesday, further fueling concerns that the Tokyo Olympics will be affected. While over 700 of the country's cases are from the Diamond Princess cruise ship, the newest case was the first found in the far western prefecture of Yamaguchi. It's stoking fears that the virus is spreading to all corners of Japan. And with just 5 months to go before Tokyo's Summer Olympics, the host city has seen 40 cases. However, at least for now, International Olympic Committee spokesperson Mark Adams said on Tuesday that the Games will proceed as scheduled.
As you know, there's not even an international travel ban and still not a pandemic announced. All the advice we're getting is that the Games can and will go ahead.
But if things get worse, what options does Japan have? A top official says the Games could be postponed. On Tuesday, Japan's Olympics minister, Seiko Hashimoto, said that Tokyo's contract with the IOC allows the Olympics to be pushed back until the end of the year. The contract states that they're to be held within the year 2020. However, the right to cancel the Games entirely still belongs to the IOC.
The U.S. Justice Department charged 2 Chinese nationals with laundering more than $100 million in cryptocurrency on behalf of North Korea. Court filings detail Pyongyang's use of hackers to circumvent sanctions.
According to an indictment filed in federal court, Tian Yin and Li Jiadong allegedly laundered cryptocurrency stolen by North Korean hackers. Taking place between December 2017 and April 2019, they helped to hide the stolen currency from police. U.S. court documents allege that Tian and Li sent roughly 2,500 deposits with over $67 million in stolen funds to 9 Chinese banks. Tian and Li are not in U.S. custody and are assumed by U.S. authorities to be in China. In a related civil forfeiture complaint, Justice Department said they had seized some of the roughly $250 million that North Korean hackers stole from a virtual currency exchange in 2018. Those funds were then laundered through hundreds of automated transactions designed to prevent investigators from tracing the funds. The same North Korean hackers were linked to a November 2019 attack on a South Korean virtual exchange that netted the hackers more than $48 million in stolen cryptocurrency. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the United States will continue to protect the global financial system by holding accountable those who help North Korea engage in cybercrime.
Here at China in Focus, we bring you first-hand information from inside China. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates.